The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as William stood by the tall windows, watching the garden where he and Kate had shared countless quiet moments. Today was different. The weight of duty pressed heavily on his shoulders, and the conversation they'd had the night before still echoed in his mind. Kate entered the room quietly, her footsteps soft against the polished floor. She had barely slept, her thoughts consumed by what lay ahead. The decision had been made weeks ago, but somehow it still felt surreal. William would be leaving for a diplomatic mission that would take him away for months, possibly longer. It wasn't just any mission. It was dangerous, delicate, and absolutely necessary for the future of the Commonwealth. She approached him slowly, noticing how his shoulders tensed as he sensed her presence. When he turned to face her, she saw the mixture of determination and sorrow in his eyes. This wasn't the first time duty had called him away, but something about this departure felt different, more final somehow. "The cars will be here soon," Kate said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She had practiced staying strong, had rehearsed keeping her composure, but seeing him now made her resolve waver. William nodded, unable to trust his voice just yet. He had given speeches to world leaders, addressed nations in crisis, but finding words for this moment seemed impossible. The royal protocol dictated how they should behave in public, but here, in the privacy of their room, they were just a husband and wife facing an uncertain separation. Kate moved closer, reaching out to straighten his tie, a gesture so familiar and intimate that it made both of them pause. Her fingers lingered longer than necessary, as if trying to memorize this simple act of caring for him. William covered her hand with his, feeling the slight tremor she was trying to hide. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they couldn't say. Outside, they could hear the distant sounds of preparation, security teams coordinating, staff members ensuring everything was ready for his departure. The world was waiting, but for this moment time seemed suspended. Kate looked up at him, studying his face as if seeing it for the first time. The strong jawline, the eyes that had captivated her from their university days, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he'd told her about on one of their first dates. She wanted to remember everything, to carry these details with her through the lonely days ahead. William lifted his hand to touch her cheek, his thumb gently tracing the line of her cheekbone. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes for a moment to savor the warmth of his palm against her skin. When she opened them again, she saw her own emotions reflected in his gaze: love, fear, hope, and a deep sadness at their necessary parting. "I need to tell you something," William said finally, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Whatever happens out there, whatever I have to do or say in the name of duty, none of it changes what we have. None of it changes how I feel about you, about us, about the life we've built together." Kate felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry, wouldn't make this harder for him than it already was. But his words, spoken with such raw honesty, nearly broke her resolve. "I know," she whispered back. "I've always known. And you need to know that I'll be here, holding everything together, keeping our world safe until you come back to me." The sound of vehicles arriving in the courtyard below reached them, and they both knew their private moment was coming to an end. Soon there would be cameras, protocol, and the careful choreography of a royal departure. But for now, they stood together in the golden morning light, two people deeply in love facing an uncertain future with courage and grace. William pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that spoke of years of shared joy and sorrow, of partnership and understanding. Kate melted into his arms, allowing herself this moment of vulnerability before she would need to become the composed royal the world expected to see. They held each other tightly, both knowing that this might be their last private moment together for a very long time. The mission ahead was shrouded in secrecy, but they both understood the risks involved. This wasn't just a farewell. It was a leap of faith into an unknown future, trusting that their love would be strong enough to survive whatever challenges lay ahead. The palace corridors seemed longer than usual, as William and Kate walked side by side toward the main entrance. Palace staff lined the hallways, their faces respectful but touched with genuine emotion. Many of them had served the royal family for decades and had watched William and Kate's relationship blossom from young love into a partnership that had captured hearts around the world. Mrs. Henderson, The head housekeeper, who had been like a second mother to William, stepped forward with tears in her eyes. She had prepared a small package wrapped in brown paper, homemade biscuits, the same kind she had made for him as a child when he was nervous or sad. William accepted the gift with a warm smile, understanding that this simple gesture carried decades of love and care. Kate walked with perfect posture, her training evident in every step, but those who knew her well could see the slight tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers occasionally brushed against her wedding ring. She had chosen to wear a navy blue dress, William's favorite color on her, and the sapphire earrings he had given her on their 5th wedding anniversary. As they approached the grand doors, Kate caught sight of their official photographer, discreetly positioned to capture this moment for history. She realized that images of this farewell would be studied and analyzed by people around the world, that their private pain would become part of the public record. The thought both comforted and troubled her. Comforted because it meant their love story would be remembered, troubled because some moments felt too sacred to share. The children had said their goodbyes earlier in private, a decision both parents had made to protect them from the intense media attention that would surround the public departure. Kate's heart ached thinking of their youngest, who had clung to William's leg and asked when Daddy would be back. William had knelt down, looked his child in the eyes, and promised to return with stories of adventure and a special gift from far away. Outside, the morning had grown brighter, and they could see the crowd gathered beyond the palace gates. Word of William's mission had leaked to the press, though the details remained classified. People had come from across London just to witness this moment, to show their support for the royal family during what they sensed was a significant time. Kate's lady-in-waiting approached quietly with a final message that had arrived from the Queen, Her Majesty's. Words were brief but powerful. Duty calls, but love endures. Godspeed. William read the message twice, feeling the weight of generations of royal service in those simple words. As they paused at the threshold, Kate turned to face him one more time before they would step into the public eye. In this final moment of privacy, she reached up and adjusted his collar, her hand steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. It was such a simple, wifely gesture, but it spoke of intimacy and care that no amount of royal training could teach. "Promise me something," Kate said quietly, so only he could hear. "Promise me you'll remember to eat properly, to rest when you can, and to call whenever it's safe to do so." William smiled despite the gravity of the moment. Even now, facing his departure for a dangerous mission, she was taking care of him in the small, everyday ways that had defined their marriage. "I promise," he said. "And you promise me you'll take care of yourself too. Don't try to carry everything alone." The doors opened and suddenly they were bathed in sunlight and the flash of cameras. The world rushed in, the sound of crowds, the whir of helicopter blades, the voices of reporters calling out questions. But for a few seconds longer, they remained focused only on each other. Kate linked her arm through his as they stepped outside, presenting a united front to the world. Her smile was radiant and confident, the smile of a woman who supported her husband's calling even as it broke her heart to see him go. William straightened his shoulders, transforming before her eyes from a husband saying goodbye to his wife into a future king preparing to serve his country. The crowd beyond the gates erupted in cheers and applause. Signs declaring "God save the prince" and "Bring him home safe" waved in the morning air. Children held up drawings they had made, and elderly veterans saluted with tears in their eyes. The outpouring of support was overwhelming, a reminder that their personal sacrifice was part of something much larger than themselves. As they walked toward the waiting car, Kate felt the eyes of the world upon them. She knew that every step, every gesture, every expression would be analyzed and interpreted, but she also knew that this moment would become part of history, a testament to love that endures even in the face of duty and sacrifice. The black car waited with its engine running, a symbol of the inevitable moment that had finally arrived. William's security detail stood at attention, their faces professional but their eyes reflecting the solemnity of the occasion. These men had protected him for years, had become friends as well as guardians, and they understood better than most what this mission meant for both William and Kate. As they approached the vehicle, Kate felt time moving both too quickly and too slowly. Part of her wanted to run back inside to pretend this day had never come. But another part of her knew that this moment had been building for months. that everything in their lives had led to this point where duty and love would be tested by distance and danger. The crowd's energy was palpable, their voices carrying across the courtyard in waves of support and emotion. Someone began singing "God Save the King," and soon hundreds of voices joined in, creating a powerful chorus that seemed to lift the very air around them. Kate felt goosebumps rise on her arms as she realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. Not just a royal departure, but a moment when an entire nation came together to show love and support. A young girl, no more than 7 years old, had somehow made it to the front of the barriers. She held a small bouquet of daisies picked from her grandmother's garden, and her eyes were wide with wonder at seeing the prince and princess in person. Kate noticed her immediately and veered slightly from their path to accept the flowers, kneeling down to the child's level despite the formal nature of the occasion. "Thank you, sweetheart," Kate said softly, her voice carrying genuine warmth. "These are beautiful. Did you pick them yourself?" The little girl nodded shyly, then whispered something that only Kate could hear. "Please keep the prince safe." The innocence and sincerity in those words hit Kate like a physical blow, reminding her that their love story belonged not just to them, but to millions of people who had invested their hopes and dreams in their happiness. William watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and pain. Kate's natural ability to connect with people, especially children, was one of the things he loved most about her. Even in this moment of personal anguish, she was thinking of others, offering comfort and grace to a child who had come to wish them well. As Kate stood up clutching the small bouquet, William placed his hand on the small of her back, a gesture so subtle that most wouldn't notice, but intimate enough to ground them both in this surreal moment. The simple touch spoke of years of partnership, of shared joys and sorrows, of two people who had learned to support each other through the unique challenges of royal life. The car door stood open, waiting. William's aide approached with a final briefing folder, classified documents that would occupy his attention during the long flight ahead. But for now, all of William's focus was on Kate, on memorizing her face in the bright morning light, on storing up this image to carry with him through whatever lay ahead. Kate looked up at him, and for a moment the carefully maintained composure slipped. Her lower lip trembled slightly, and William saw the tears she had been holding back threatening to spill over. Without thinking of the cameras or the crowd, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away a single tear that had escaped. "I love you," he said, the words clear enough for those nearby to hear. It wasn't a declaration meant for the public, but a private truth that happened to be witnessed by the world. In that moment, royal protocol gave way to human emotion, and everyone watching understood they were seeing something real and unguarded. Kate closed her eyes, leaning into his touch one last time. "I love you too," she whispered back. "More than duty, more than fear, more than anything else in this world." The moment stretched between them, precious and fragile. Around them, the crowd had fallen silent, sensing the sacredness of what they were witnessing. Even the most hardened photographers seemed to lower their cameras slightly, as if recognizing that some moments transcended their professional obligations. William's security chief cleared his throat gently, a respectful reminder that schedules must be kept and planes must be boarded. The spell was broken, but the connection between William and Kate remained unshakable. They had said what needed to be said, had shared what needed to be shared. As William prepared to step into the car, Kate straightened his tie one final time, her fingers lingering on the silk fabric. It was a gesture both practical and symbolic, her last act of caring for him before entrusting that responsibility to others. The car door closed with a soft thud that seemed to echo across the courtyard. Through the bulletproof glass, William raised his hand in a final wave, his eyes never leaving Kate's face. She stood perfectly still, her own hand raised in response, the small bouquet of daisies clutched in her other hand like a talisman. The car began to move slowly through the courtyard, and Kate walked alongside it for several steps, unwilling to let the connection break just yet. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the stone pavement, keeping pace with the vehicle as if she could somehow extend this moment indefinitely. Inside, William pressed his palm against the window, and Kate matched the gesture, their hands separated by glass but united in love. The crowd began to cheer again as the car approached the gates, but the sound seemed distant to Kate, like voices heard underwater. Her entire world had narrowed to the figure visible through the tinted window, to the man she was entrusting to fate and duty. She finally stopped walking when the car reached the main gate, standing perfectly straight as it disappeared into the London traffic. Behind her, palace staff maintained a respectful distance, giving her these final moments of connection. Even the photographers seemed to sense the solemnity of the occasion, their camera clicks subdued and respectful. Kate remained motionless for several minutes, watching the direction the car had taken long after it had vanished from sight. Lady Sarah, Kate's closest friend and lady-in-waiting, approached quietly. She had known this day would be difficult and had prepared herself to provide whatever support Kate might need. But seeing her friend's composure in the face of such heartbreak filled her with admiration and concern in equal measure. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said softly, using the formal address that reminded Kate she was still on public display. "Perhaps we should go inside now." Kate nodded slowly but didn't move immediately. She was thinking of William, imagining him in the car traveling through the streets of London toward the airport. She pictured him looking out at the familiar sights, the Thames, the bridges, the buildings that had been the backdrop of their courtship and marriage. Was he thinking of their first official engagement, when they had traveled this same route together, nervous but excited about their future? A gentle breeze stirred the air, rustling the leaves of the ancient oak trees that lined the palace drive. Kate lifted the small bouquet of daisies to her nose, breathing in their simple, sweet fragrance. The gesture was captured by dozens of cameras, but for Kate, it was a private moment of connection to the little girl who had given them to her, to the innocence and hope they represented. As she finally turned to walk back toward the palace, the crowd beyond the gates began to disperse slowly, but many lingered, as if reluctant to let the moment end. Some held up their phones, recording video messages of support to send to friends and family around the world. Others simply stood in quiet reflection, understanding that they had witnessed something historically significant. Inside the palace, Kate's schedule was clear for the rest of the day, a rare gift in her usually packed agenda. She had specifically requested this time, knowing she would need space to process William's departure before resuming her public duties. But as she walked through the familiar halls, the silence felt oppressive rather than comforting. She made her way to their private sitting room, the space where they had shared morning coffee and evening conversations, where they had planned their children's futures and debated everything from state policies to what to watch on television. Without William's presence, the room felt hollow, as if the life had been drained from it. Kate settled into William's favorite chair, still wearing her navy dress and the sapphire earrings. She held the bouquet in her lap, turning the simple flowers over in her hands. The daisies were already beginning to wilt slightly in the warm morning air, their white petals soft and fragile. She thought about pressing them in a book, preserving them as a reminder of this day and the little girl's innocent wish for William's safety. Her phone buzzed with the first of what would be hundreds of messages from around the world. Friends, family members, and even strangers who had been moved by the public farewell reached out with words of support and encouragement. The outpouring of love was overwhelming but also comforting. She realized that while she felt alone in this moment, she was actually surrounded by millions of people who cared about their happiness and were praying for William's safe return. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Henderson entered with a tea service, moving quietly and efficiently as she had done thousands of times before. But today, she added an extra touch. William's favorite biscuits arranged on a small plate, and a single white rose from the palace garden placed beside the teapot. "I thought you might need this, Your Royal Highness," the older woman said gently, "and I wanted you to know that we're all thinking of you both. His Royal Highness will return safely. I feel it in my bones." Kate smiled for the first time since William's departure, touched by the housekeeper's kindness and certainty. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means more than you know." As the door closed behind the housekeeper, Kate poured herself tea with hands that were finally steady. She was beginning to understand that this separation, as painful as it was, would also be a test of her own strength and resilience. She had spent years learning to be a royal, but now she would learn to be a royal alone, carrying on their shared responsibilities while half of her heart traveled to distant lands. Hours passed in the quiet sitting room as Kate allowed herself to fully feel the weight of William's absence. She had moved to the window seat, the same spot where she often waited for him to return from his various duties and engagements. The view overlooked the garden where they had walked together just the evening before, planning this departure and talking about their hopes for his mission's success. Her phone rang, and she saw her mother's name on the screen. Carol Middleton had been watching the farewell coverage on television and couldn't wait any longer to reach out to her daughter. Kate answered immediately, grateful for the familiar, loving voice that had comforted her through every major moment of her life. "Darling, how are you holding up?" her mother asked, her voice full of concern and pride. "You looked absolutely magnificent out there, but I know how much this must be costing you." Kate felt tears threatening again at her mother's words. "It's harder than I expected, Mom. I thought I was prepared, but watching him drive away..." She paused, unable to finish the sentence. "I know, sweetheart, but you did exactly what needed to be done. You showed the world what real love looks like, supporting someone even when it breaks your heart to let them go. William is lucky to have you, and you'll both get through this." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Carol sharing family news and making Kate laugh with stories about her father's latest attempts at gardening. It was exactly what Kate needed, a reminder that beyond the palace walls, beyond royal duty and protocol, she was still someone's daughter, still connected to a family that loved her unconditionally. After ending the call, Kate made a decision. She couldn't spend the day hiding in their private rooms no matter how much she wanted to. William was out there serving his country, and she needed to honor that by continuing to serve as well. She called her private secretary and asked for her schedule to be adjusted. She wanted to visit the children's hospital they both supported, the place where they had first worked together on a major charitable initiative. 2 hours later, Kate walked through the hospital corridors, her composure completely restored. She had changed into a cheerful yellow dress, a color that always lifted her spirits, and had taken extra care with her appearance. The children she met couldn't know about her personal struggles. They needed to see hope and joy in her face. In the cancer ward, she sat with a young boy named Tommy who had been following news of the royal family with keen interest. He had drawn a picture of William in his military uniform, complete with medals and a cape that looked suspiciously like something from a superhero comic. "Will the prince really fight bad guys?" Tommy asked earnestly, his eyes wide with the kind of innocent curiosity that only children possess. Kate smiled, thinking carefully about how to answer. "He's going to help solve some very important problems," she said. "Sometimes the most important battles are fought with words and kindness, not swords and shields. Like how you fight sadness by making people smile?" Tommy asked, and Kate felt her breath catch. This 7-year-old had somehow understood something profound about her role, about how she and William tried to bring light into difficult situations. "Exactly like that," she whispered, leaning down to hug him gently. Throughout the afternoon, Kate threw herself into her work with renewed energy. She listened to doctors explain new treatment protocols, played games with children too sick to leave their beds, and spoke with parents who were facing their own battles with fear and uncertainty. Each interaction reminded her that while her separation from William felt overwhelming, people around the world were dealing with challenges that put her own struggles into perspective. As evening approached, Kate returned to the palace feeling emotionally drained but purposeful. She had dinner alone in their private dining room, but set 2 places out of habit before remembering William wouldn't be joining her. The simple mistake brought fresh tears but also a rueful smile. These adjustments would take time. Her phone buzzed with a secure message notification, the kind used for classified communications. Her heart raced as she realized it might be from William. The message was brief but precious. "Arrive safely. Missing you already. Tell the children I love them. All my love, W." Kate read the message 3 times, then saved it to read again later. Just knowing he had arrived at his destination safely lifted a weight from her shoulders. She quickly typed back, "Children send their love. Hospital visit today reminded me why we do this work. Stay safe. All my love always, C." As she prepared for bed that night, Kate established what would become her ritual for the coming months. She placed the small bouquet of daisies, now carefully pressed between the pages of their wedding album, on William's pillow. She said a quiet prayer for his safety and for the success of his mission, and she promised herself that she would wake up tomorrow, ready to carry on their shared work with grace and determination. Outside her window, London settled into night. Somewhere in the darkness, planes crossed the sky carrying travelers to distant destinations. Kate looked up at the stars, knowing that William might be seeing the same constellations from wherever his journey had taken him. The thought comforted her as she drifted off to sleep, already counting the days until his return. 3 months had passed since that emotional farewell morning, and Kate had established a new rhythm to her days. Each morning began with checking for secure messages from William, though they came irregularly due to the sensitive nature of his mission. She had learned to measure time not in hours or days, but in the precious communications that reminded her he was safe and thinking of her. The world had watched her navigate this separation with increasing admiration. Her public appearances had taken on a new quality. She seemed more confident, more independently assured, as if the challenge of carrying royal duties alone had revealed strength she hadn't known she possessed. The press began referring to her as the people's princess in her own right, not just as William's wife, but as a royal who had earned her place through grace under pressure. On this particular morning, Kate was in the palace nursery, reading to local school children as part of a literacy initiative she had expanded during William's absence. The children hung on her every word as she told them the story of a brave prince who traveled to distant lands to help people in need. It wasn't officially about William, but the children seemed to sense the personal connection in her voice. "Will he come back?" asked Lucy, a 6-year-old with pigtails and an earnest expression. "All the best stories have happy endings," Kate replied with a smile that had become easier and more genuine over the weeks. "And this prince promised to return home to the people who love him." After the reading session, Kate's private secretary approached with an unusual expression, excitement mixed with something like relief. "Your Royal Highness, there's been a development. You're needed in the private office immediately." Kate's heart began to race. In 3 months of separation, urgent summons had meant only one thing: news about William's mission. She excused herself politely from the children and made her way quickly through the palace corridors, her mind spinning through possibilities both wonderful and terrifying. In the private office, she found several senior advisors gathered around a secure communication system. Their faces carried an unmistakable air of celebration, barely contained by professional protocol. Kate's chief of staff stepped forward with a formal document in his hands. "Your Royal Highness, we've received confirmation that His Royal Highness's mission has been successfully completed. He's en route home and will arrive tomorrow morning." The words hit Kate like a physical force. For a moment she couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but absorb the reality that her worst fears hadn't materialized and her greatest hope was about to be fulfilled. "William was coming home, is he?" she began, then had to clear her throat to continue. "Is he well?" "Uninjured. Completely well, ma'am. The mission exceeded all expectations. His Royal Highness has specifically requested that his arrival be kept private until he can see you and the children first." Kate nodded, understanding immediately. Just as their farewell had been intensely public, their reunion should be intensely private. There would be time for public celebrations later, but the first moments needed to belong to them alone. The rest of that day passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Kate found herself unable to concentrate on anything for more than a few minutes. She changed her outfit 3 times, settling finally on the same navy blue dress she had worn for their farewell, a decision that felt right in a way she couldn't quite explain. That evening, she stood at the same window where she had waited for William to return from shorter trips. But this time the waiting felt different. Every sound in the courtyard made her heart skip, even though she knew he wouldn't arrive until morning. She had sent the children to stay with her parents overnight, wanting these first hours to be just for them. Unable to sleep, Kate found herself in their sitting room at 3 in the morning, holding a cup of tea and watching the sky begin to lighten. She thought about all the changes the past 3 months had brought, not just in her public role, but in her understanding of herself and their relationship. She had learned she could carry royal responsibilities alone, but she had also learned how much stronger they were together. As the sun rose, Kate heard the distinctive sound of helicopter blades in the distance. Her heart began to pound as the sound grew closer, then settled into the familiar rhythm of a royal flight approaching the palace. She stood up slowly, smoothing her dress and taking a deep breath. The helicopter landed in the private courtyard, away from public view and media attention. Through the window, Kate watched as the aircraft powered down and the door opened. Then she saw him. William stepping out into the morning light, looking tired but healthy, scanning the palace windows as if searching for her face. Their eyes met across the courtyard, and simultaneously they both broke into smiles that could have powered the entire city. William raised his hand in a small wave, the same gesture he had made when leaving, but now full of joy instead of sorrow. Kate pressed her palm against the window again, just as she had done that morning 3 months ago. But this time, instead of watching him drive away, she was watching him come home. And as she turned from the window and ran toward the door to meet him, Kate realized that their love story had just completed another chapter, one that had tested them both and proven that some bonds really are strong enough to survive anything. The world had felt their farewell, had witnessed their pain and separation. Soon the world would feel their reunion too, and understand that sometimes the greatest love stories are not about people who never face challenges, but about people who face them together and emerge even stronger on the other side.